Welcome back to East Texas Now's Vet Project Pet Project segment. This is where we get local veterinarians in on the desk with us to be able to answer some of the questions that you guys actually send in to our vets. Now, we had some questions regarding kennel cough. I believe that's kind of going to be our theme for today. Let me introduce you to this week's vet. Please help me to welcome. Here he is, Dr. Kirk Reese with the Whitehouse Veterinary Hospital. Dr. Reese, thank you so much for joining us here this afternoon on the desk. All righty, let's look. I think you might be muted, Dr. Reese. If you could just hit that microphone there on the computer, and then we will be good to go. There it is. It looks like maybe we got this back now. Let's see. There we are. Hey, Dr. Reese. Nice to have you here on the East Texas Now desk.
Nice to be with you. Thank you.
Absolutely. Okay, so we are talking all things kennel cough. So we'll start off with the first question that a viewer sent in. What exactly is kennel cough? Let's get the definition. And what are some of the causes behind it?
Okay, so kennel cough is canine infectious tracheal bronchitis. Some people call it canine infectious respiratory disease complex because several things are the cause of it. It can be typically one or two viruses and several bacteria. The most common bacteria is something called Bordetella bronchoseptica, and the two most important viruses that are involved are parainfluenza and adenovirus number 2.
Man, that is a whole lot of sciencey terms that we might not all completely understand. I understood a couple of those only because, as a dog owner myself, I know that we've had to do Bordetella vaccines and things of that nature. But we'll get into that while we're talking preventative measures. Let's go into what are things that we can recognize. Right? That's not we're not going to know all of those terms in our head as much as you guys are, but something that we see in our own pets. What are some signs? What are some symptoms that might throw up some red flags so that we can take them to you and then get the really fancy words for them?
Sure. So the most common symptom is a dry hacking cough, and the cough can be pretty persistent and pretty annoying. Sometimes it can be constant. Sometimes it's several spurts throughout the day where you cough a whole bunch and not as much. Sometimes we can get runny noses, sometimes runny eyes. Most of the time it's fairly a mild condition, but it can lead to pneumonia and become more serious. Sometimes they run fevers, many times they don't.
Oh, wow. Okay, so it sounds like there is a large spectrum of severities, right? And in different ways that it can present itself. I know that my own dog, I have a long-haired German Shepherd at home, and she suffers from some allergies. And so sometimes she gets these kinds of symptoms that you're talking about, with the nose itching and almost like a reverse sneezing a couple of times. And then, of course, there's things like, the canine flu or the common cold. So how can we tell the difference, right? Is it something that no matter what, just take him to the vet and you guys can decide, or is there some differences that we can spot at home as well?
Well, more times than not, it's not that important to find out the difference. It can get fairly expensive to do cultures and like certain lab tests to try to figure out if it's flu versus kennel cough or not, or some other thing causing the coughing, where many times the treatment will be the same. Most of these things typically are annoying, but many times they're self-limiting unless a small percentage of the cases can become more serious, can lead to pneumonia, where we're really getting sick and not feeling well. Many dogs with coughing feel pretty decent if it's kennel cough or another infectious agent causing the coughing, and many of the treatments will be similar. So honestly, more times than not, we don't do these tests to try to figure out exactly what it is.
That makes total sense as long as, the same symptoms or the same solutions are used. Why hurt your wallet and already have your dog healed? Now, you're talking about these same treatments. Can you give us a few examples of what those treatments are?
Well, it depends on the exact symptoms, but many times it'll be a combination of some type of anti-inflammatory, some anti-cough medicines, and usually, especially if the veterinarian suspects a bacterial cause, some type of antibiotic. And most dogs, within a few days of starting those medicines, will be much improved. And usually we'll treat these conditions 10 to 14 days, and most dogs will make a full recovery.
That makes sense. Now that we've talked about treatments, let's go over preventions. Now, like I said, of all of those terms that you used to describe kennel cough, the one that I understood was Bordetella, and that is because my dog obviously has had to have, the Bordetella vaccine. Does that prevent kennel cough? Is that something that goes along with it? And are there preventions to make sure that your dog just doesn't get it in general?
Yes, that's a great question. So the Bordetella vaccine is a vaccine against the bacteria Bordetella bronchoseptica, which is the most common bacteria that causes kennel cough. Unfortunately, it's not the only bacteria. And so that's if any dog that boards or grooms or is around a lot of other dogs, like go to dog parks on a regular basis, definitely Bordetella vaccine is recommended. Also, most veterinary hospitals or clinics will give what most people call a 5-in-1 vaccine, and that's going to include distemper and parvo, which most people are familiar with, but it also includes the other two very common viruses that are associated with kennel cough, the parainfluenza and the adenovirus 2. So all dogs should get a 5-in-1 on a regular basis. And so if you do the 5-in-1 or the 6-in-1 or even the 7-in-1 sometimes, and the Bordetella, you're doing a lot to prevent the kennel cough. Also,
Yeah, go for it.
recently there's been some outbreaks of canine influenza across the country. There's 2 strains of that. One strain has seemed to have gone away, but we still have another strain that not everybody recommends, but I usually do for dogs that board. Same situation. Boarding dogs, dogs that go to groomers, and dogs that spend a lot of time with other dogs at dog parks and things like that.
Yeah,
So those are
absolutely.
the best ways to prevent it. Yes.
And that makes sense. And so I would assume that it's safe to say kennel cough is highly contagious among other dogs because it's where other dogs are getting together. Now, is it also contagious? Can those dogs pass it to other animals and other pets? We're talking cats or any other smaller pets as well. Does kennel cough kind of transfer to those other pets as well?
So, not commonly, cats can catch Bordetella. There's a thing called cat kennel cough that's a little bit different, and we mainly see that from cats that congregate, especially like breeding facilities or things like that. But the same bacteria that causes dog kennel cough transfer to cats can happen, but it's uncommon. And as far as I know, we do at our hospital do treat uh, pocket pets and things like that. As far as I know, they're fairly resistant to dog kennel cough, although ferrets can have a coughing type syndrome. I don't think it's the same bacteria.
That makes sense. A bit of a silver lining then to know that it is not common for it to pass to the other pets of the family. Well, once again, Dr. Reese, thank you so much for joining us here on East Texas Now. Don't be a stranger. Come back anytime.
Okay, great. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. We appreciate you. All right, guys, if you guys want to have your own questions answered next week on our Pet Project, Vet Project segment, this is how you can do it. Take a look at this. You email vetpetproject@KLTV or KTRE.com. Email whatever questions. It'll come straight to us here that deal with our vet project, the people behind the scenes, and then we will pass them along to our vet of the week. They're always local vets, and so I'm sure you guys, you pet owners out there, have recognized at least a vet or two that we've had on the show. Let us know your questions. We'll be able to pass it right along to them. In the meantime, y'all, we are going to go ahead, take a short break. We'll get right back to news coverage here when we return. Stay tuned. You're watching East Texas Now.